I'm almost certain that everyone can agree when I say that GTA 5 can look absolutely beautiful at times. Whether you're wandering through the forests or speeding down a highway, the game almost never fails to keep you immersed in this huge virtual world. There's many factors that go into this immersion, but one of the most important is all of the smaller details, like hearing broken glass crunch underneath your feet, seeing your flip-flops actually flip and flop, or watching a paramedic try to revive someone that you recently bludgeoned to death. All of these details, although small, all add up to create the illusion of a living and breathing world. However, it seems like no place in the game is more underappreciated for its detail than the ocean, due to how vast it is and how long it can take to navigate it. In this video, we're going to go over all of the unique wrecks, Easter eggs, and other details that can be found below the ocean waves. Let's start this off with all of the plane wrecks. Just west of the military base, we can find the crash site of an unknown cargo plane. It seems that the front half of the plane broke off during impact, causing it to land further away from the rest of the wreckage. From the looks of it, this aircraft is based on the Soviet Antonov AN-124 Ruslan. Due to its close proximity to Fort Zancudo and the fact that multiple weapons can be found on this wreckage, I would assume that this aircraft has some sort of failed takeoff from Fort Zancudo, which caused it to crash shortly after leaving the airstrip. Off the coast of Paleto Bay, there is a crash site of a Fly US airliner. Although this aircraft appears to be a lot bigger than any of the other planes in the game, it has a resemblance to the commercial jet that is sometimes found at the airport, which in of itself seems to be based on the Boeing 747. From the looks of this wreckage, it must have crashed fairly recently, as there's little to no corrosion on the plane, nor has any coral formed on it. Despite it being a relatively recent wreckage, there is no reference to this crash anywhere in the game's media. It's currently unknown what caused this plane to crash. In the waters next to Mount Gordo, there's a small wreckage of a crop duster. Judging by its condition, this aircraft has been laying here for quite some time. The craft resembles a Stearman PT-17, which has been modified to spray fertilizer on crops, which is quite odd considering how far away the aircraft is from any farmland. Furthermore, multiple weapons can be found among the wreckage, such as a shotgun, a pistol, and sticky bombs. This leads me to believe that this aircraft was used to smuggle weapons. Some other theories state that this is the same crop duster that Trevor used to infiltrate the Merrywheather cargo plane in the mission Minor Turbulence. However, this cannot be the case, as the duster loses both of its wings when entering the plane, and in this wreckage the crop duster still has both of its wings attached. Just east of the port of Los Santos, we can find another wrecked airliner. Unlike the previous wreckage, this one has been sitting here for quite a long time, as judging by the corals and overall condition of the aircraft. Around the crash site, it's possible to find some weaponry such as grenades and assault rifles. This could potentially mean that the aircraft crashed as a result of a hijacking or bombing. There is also some bullet-shaped holes in the cockpit windows, which would reinforce this theory. The final plane wreckage can be found in the middle of the Alamo Sea. The aircraft is a Merrywheather cargo plane which got shot down by US fighter jets during the events of the story mission Minor Turbulence. The aircraft contains a lot of weapons such as MGs, snipers, RPGs, grenade launchers, and even an experimental high-tech weapon called the railgun. And that concludes all of the plane wrecks that can be found around the map. We're now going to be focusing on all of the shipwrecks. There are 3 identical sunken tugboats which are all in completely different parts of the map. Since all 3 of these ships are pretty much the same, I've lumped them all together to save time. All of these tugboats seem to be loosely based on the Janice and Raynor, and all of them have an identical gaping hole on the front of the hull, which is most likely what caused them to sink in the first place. Unfortunately, as this does seem to be a copy and paste model, nothing of real interest can be found around these wreckages. East of the Palomino Highlands, you can find a massive wreckage of a huge cargo ship. Some of the ship's parts can be seen over 250 yards away from the actual ship itself. The first thing that you would probably notice about this ship is its odd location. I'm not an expert on ships by any stretch of the imagination, but I think that this whole area would have been way too shallow for a ship of this size to safely move in. It's likely that this ship had a collision with the seafloor, which evidently caused it to sink. Just south of Aleutian Island, you can find the wreckage of a massive but rather decrepit ship. It's quite obvious that this ship has been down here for quite some time, as everything is completely covered in rust. If we take a closer look at this wreckage, we can see what looks to be the top half of a tank, along with other heavy weaponry such as RPGs. The ship could have either been a battleship or just a regular cargo ship that was carrying military cargo. And for this last shipwreck, we have this massive side-wheeled paddle steamer, which is also known as a side-wheeler. Unfortunately, nothing of real interest can be found in or around the wreckage, and there's no clear indication as to what caused it to sink. One thing I can note about this ship is that it completely dwarfs most of the paddle steamers I managed to find online. Just going by the looks alone, it seems to be around the same size as the American Queen, which is said to be the world's largest river steamboat ever built. Now let's go over all of the weird things that don't quite fit into any category. Off the coast of Pacific Bluffs, you can find this really strange looking structure. From what I've gathered online, no one really knows what this structure is supposed to be. Some have speculated that it's a docked submarine that has been abandoned. Others speculate that it's an underwater research lab. I personally think that it looks like some sort of oil rig, but I can't really be sure. If you have any clue as to what this thing could be, then please let us know in the comments. Just west off of Banham Canyon there is a whale skeleton. Some people like to think that this is the skeleton of a sea monster, but after looking at some whale skeletons online, it's pretty clear that this is nothing more than the remains of a whale. Just north of Mount Chiliad we can find the wreckage of a crashed UFO. This model of UFO appears to be a slightly larger version of the UFO found above Silent Probe Mountain. There doesn't appear to be any sign of damage on the craft itself, making it unlikely that it was shot down. If I would have to guess, I would say that the craft lost power and subsequently crash landed. Just east of Chumash there's an underwater tyre graveyard. This could potentially be a reference to the Osborne Reef disaster in 2007, where a team of divers placed hundreds of thousands of tyres underwater in an attempt to expand the reef. The main idea was that the tyres would act like a reef to the local wildlife, but unfortunately the whole plan backfired and it did more harm than good, as the lightweight tyres would become subject to the tropical winds and storms of Florida, and would often collide with coral reefs at tremendous speeds, most of the time destroying them. It's a very small and obscure reference, but still pretty cool nonetheless. Just north of Mount Gordo there's a wreckage of a nuclear submarine. The appearance of the sub has some similarities with the submarines used during World War II, but what exact make of submarine this is supposed to be, I've no idea. Judging by how close the submarine is to the shore, I think it's likely that this vessel got destroyed by colliding with the sea floor. Just east of the Humane Labs you can find a debris field of sunken military vehicles and cargo. Around this area you can find 4 tanks, 2 of which appear to be based on the German Leopard 2A4, or as it's known in game, the Rhino tank. The other 2 appear to be German World War II Panzers. There's also an oversized barracks semi, which seems to be loosely based on the M91 5A5 line haul tractor, as well as the decrepit remains of a ship, and some unexploded missiles. Because all of these vehicles and other bits of debris all come from wildly different time periods and countries, it leads me to believe that the US military used this area as a dumping ground for unused and unwanted military cargo. Southeast of the Humane Labs you can find a very mysterious hatch. The hatch itself is most likely a reference to the TV show called Lost. If you approach the hatch, you will hear a message and tap code. If we translate this message, it says, "Hey, you never call. How do you fancy going bowling?" This is a reference to Roman, a character in GTA 4 that would often call the player and ask them to go bowling with him. These phone calls became quite a big meme among the GTA community, so it's pretty cool that Rockstar made little reference to it. And finally, if we go north of Paleto Bay, we can find 8 corpses which are spread out among these small islands. All of these dead bodies are believed to be the victims of the Infinity 8 serial killer. This killer, whose real name is Merle Abrahams, carried out these murders in 1999, and then was shortly after captured by the police and incarcerated in Bolingbroke Penitentiary. Despite the authorities' best efforts, the bodies of the victims were never discovered, even though there was quite a few clues left behind by Merle himself. Unfortunately, as the authorities have most likely gave up the search, these bodies will never be recovered. And that just about does it for all of the underwater secrets and details. I hope you enjoyed exploring these murky depths with me, and I'll see you later.